Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Zone Star State podcast. I'm Matthew Brune, and joining me once again is Ishmael Johnson. It's March 24th, and we are officially done with the first weekend of the men's tournament. The women will conclude today, get their second round games completed, but I know some people have said, it hasn't been the thriller of a first weekend that we've, I guess become used to, or at least fantasize about in our heads about like, oh my gosh, all these upsets. And there haven't been a ton of upsets, but I still had an incredible time watching these past 4 days. What about you?
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I get where people are coming from, right? I think this is the first Sweet 16 ever since they've been labeled the Sweet 16 that we haven't had a seed lower than 10
Mhm.
represented. So I get, like, oh, there's no Cinderella stories. Is it NIL? Is it whatever? There have been some great games. We had a literal buzzer beater last night between Maryland and
Oh,
Colorado State,
yes.
and we've had great games. Again, we may not have had the buzzer beaters that we are used to, plural. We may not have had the Cinderella stories that we've been used to, but we've had really, really good games. And that's the other side of this is when you don't have the Cinderella teams, I hate to say it, every year when the Cinderella teams happen, eventually they just run into a brick wall and they
Well,
get
and
blown out. Yeah.
eventually, like after, especially once you get to the Sweet 16 Elite Eight, where there's like a gap between the
Yeah.
games, it's like, damn, like instead of getting we're getting all these ranked games where it's, let's say, Florida versus Maryland. Like
Right.
if Colorado State would have won, cool, would have been great. Like Nick Clifford is a very good player, like going to be an NBA guy, so they have some talent. But it would have been Florida versus Colorado State instead of Florida versus Maryland. Like
Right. Exactly.
Florida versus
So
Maryland is maybe the best game in the entire Sweet 16. Like that's an incredible matchup, and instead it would have been Florida versus Colorado State. Like the Cinderellas are fun in the first round, and then after like the second round, then it's like I wish we could have gotten we're getting Kentucky versus Tennessee. Like what if it was Tennessee versus Troy? Like
right. I think Bomani Jones always talks about that. He's like, everybody loves Cinderellas until it's like the Elite Eight. And everybody's like, all right,
yeah,
let's see Duke versus Kansas. Like it's like,
yes,
all right, that's cute. That was
yes.
fun. But eventually you realize that there's a talent gap. And yeah, like it is what it is. So I think that's gonna be the other side of this is I think we're gonna get some very good games now going forward into the championship, into the Final Four. So
Now, obviously, we'll focus on Texas here. We'll talk about all the teams that are remaining, the teams that had
yep.
their season ended. But we got to start with Texas men's basketball.
Yeah.
Their season did end, so we are talking about them in that light. If we want to touch on that real quick, lost to Xavier in the first four, and honestly, I just as a person who watches Texas basketball, person who has followed Texas basketball for a long time.
Hmm.
At this point, I was a very, very annoyed at that loss. Like that
Hmm.
loss actually irked me, and not like
Yeah.
just watching it. I felt time and time again. I was like, okay, they're gonna pull away at some point. Like they are vastly superior in terms of talent. Like I just thought from top to bottom they had too much. Kendall Weaver was playing great. Like I thought Trey Johnson had his moments again, and I was like, okay, they're gonna pull away. Xavier does not have enough, and then they go and lose the game. And not only did they lose, they collapsed. They didn't score. I don't even remember what the stat was. It's been almost a week at this point where they didn't score in the last, 4 minutes? Is that what it
Yeah.
was?
It
Three,
was
four
like
minutes?
three. It was like three. It was basically 4 minutes. Yeah.
And it just completely encapsulated what was wrong with the Rodney Terry era, with him not being able to capitalize on talent and losing to a superior coach in Sean Miller, who we'll talk about later. So that just from a game perspective, that was an appropriate ending to the Rodney Terry era, because if I'm upset, I can only imagine how upset Texas fans are. Like that was a pretty frustrating loss right there.
Yeah. Right. I mean, agreed. I think you nailed it, and we kind of talked about it where we were like, they have and they were the more talented team, but even then, by probably Texas's standards, that wasn't a very talented team, right?
Correct.
Like, especially when you look at the rest of the SEC and what the SEC is
Yes.
doing right now, obviously they have a top 5 to 10 NBA future pick in Trey Johnson. But you looked at the Texas team and you saw the more that Rodney Terry got his hands on the roster, in terms of the roster build from the Chris Beard era, they got worse, right? Like you look at the first team that Chris Beard brought in, it was really good. I think they underperformed by what their standards should have probably been at the time. The next year, obviously, what happened with Chris Beard happened. That team was set up to be a Final Four team, and it got to the Elite Eight. And then the next year, they got worse. And next year, this year, they got worse. And then next year, there was no indication that they were going to be big players in the portal. They didn't have a great signing class. So, like, it was going to get worse again, right? You were going to lose Trey Johnson. And who knows who else via the transfer portal or whatever. And so you had to make a move when you saw the team not performing and then the talent not getting worse. And so I don't think it was a surprise that, Rodney Terry was eventually let go, especially when you see the SEC getting harder, right? The SEC is getting more talented. I think Florida becoming what they are this year should have rightfully scared a lot of Texas fans. We're like, well, geez, like we didn't know Florida was going to be this good this quickly. And so all of a sudden you got them. Whatever's going to happen with, I'm trying to let me just bring up a couple of the other
the
programs.
Mississippi schools being good,
I
even
was
if
about
they're
to
not
say,
great, like they're
Ole
better than
Miss
Texas.
now making the Sweet 16 their first year. Vanderbilt made the tournament in their first year, right, under Mark Byington. Georgia, all of us, they're Mike White, they made the tournament in their first year, and yeah, Mississippi State with Chris Jans, and you just look and you're like, oh my gosh, like there's going to be so many teams that are passing us up. We need to make a move, and yeah,
Arkansas, Cal, is now in the Sweet 16, and he's only going to get more talent there. Missouri, Kentucky, you mentioned it. This is just and we've talked about it throughout the season, so I don't have too much to add in terms of it's just it had to happen. Like it had to happen, even if they beat Xavier. And honestly, even if they maybe even won a tournament game against who would they play? Syracuse in the first round.
Yeah.
Like it would have, like we said going into it, it would have taken a Sweet 16.
It would have been it was Illinois, wasn't it?
Illinois, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Dude, I texted my friend Syracuse last night too, watching Illinois. I don't know why I just see orange and I think Syracuse. But yes, like we said, but going into it, it would have taken a Sweet 16 Elite 8 appearance for Rodney Terry to extend it. But that didn't happen, and it didn't happen because of, I think, his coaching limitations in a large way. So here we are. Rodney Terry is officially fired. Any more on that before we get to who they hired?
No. I mean, it was the hiring process was pretty quick, as we've seen from Chris Del Conte. He does not, I believe, his longest coaching search was 4 or 5 days. I think that was Chris Beard. But usually he has his guy and he dials in and he goes for it.
So they hire Sean Miller from Xavier. Obviously a coach that has a pedigree of winning, had to drop that back to now you can correct me or whatever, but dropped back to Xavier after the Arizona situation where he did get in trouble for recruiting violations there. Kind of, I feel like everybody's got in trouble with recruiting violations, but who cares? It's in the past. So we know he can be a great coach at a big program. He knows what it takes to win. He knows what it takes to recruit. I will say my initial impression was like, damn, we're not even gonna like search. And I understand they definitely did do a coaching search behind the scenes. Like, I'm not saying this was just go hire Sean Miller. But I was excited like by the prospect of them being like, well, could they go get X, Y, or Z? And it kind of just turned into, all right, they fired Terry, hired Sean Miller, and it happened really quickly. And me personally, I was just like, man, I kind of wish they could have taken a second just to go and look around to see if they could have gotten a maybe big fish like a NATO. It's like we've talked about before, or something like that. But that might have been wishful thinking, and I do think this is a good hire, at the very least.
Yeah, I think, and it should be noted that I believe Sean Miller was also, a lot of people were reporting that Sean Miller was probably going to be the hire if they didn't promote Rodney Terry back in 2023. He was high on their list. I believe he was coming off his first season back at Xavier. But yeah, like, look, I get both sides, right? I'm okay with the hire because I think that Texas did need a guarantee, or at least a close to a guarantee. And after going with Rodney Terry, obviously they thought they had it with Chris Beard. Chris Del Conte has a type of hire, right? He goes for the slam dunk, more or less, right? He goes for the the proven commodity to a certain extent. Sark is probably his only one that wasn't at that point. But you look at baseball, you look at softball, you look at, men's basketball when they got Beard, women's basketball, Vic Schaefer, right? Like he goes with the guys that can get him a certain level at the very least. And then he hopes that the Texas resources can then give him extra. If you look at Sean Miller, right, his whole career, he became kind of a meme at points in Arizona because like his teams would win like 30 games and then lose in like the second round or something.
Yeah.
If you're Sean Miller or if you're Texas and you look at a coach that had a 73% win percentage in a big conference, in a good conference, the Pac-12 at that time with Arizona, and you're raking in top recruits, right? DeAndre Ayton, Wesley Johnson, right? I'm naming off historical guys for them, reeling off 30 wins, right? And you're losing in the Sweet 16, you're losing in the second round. You'll take that. Right now, where Texas is, right, post Rick Barnes, you will take getting back to that and then hoping that just Texas money, Texas resources will get you over that hump and get you. Again, this is a coach that has never made a Final Four, right? Obviously, Sean Miller. He's made the Elite Eight four times. So you
Xavier
could say,
once,
you could say like, oh my gosh, why didn't we get a coach that has made a Final Four? One, there are only a handful of coaches right now that have made a Final Four coaching right now. Two, Elite Eights, literally one game away. And if you're in Arizona is a great program, but they don't have the resources of Texas. If you can if his baseline is Arizona and you can build on that with just money and talent and all, you'll take that, right? You will just take that. And so again, would I have preferred them to at least kick the tires on Richard Pitino or Royal Ivy in the NBA, right? They're former players now at the Rockets, who's a lot of really, he's every team that he's on the bench of has like gone to the playoffs. He was with the Nets, now he's with the Rockets. I think Kevin Durant endorsed him back in like 2021 when they fired Shaka Smart. And so like I would have liked that. Sure, yeah, that would have been fun. But like I know that it's not where Texas can't risk a first-time head coach with a Royal Ivy, and so it's like just go get the guy, just go get the other guy that can get it done. Especially you thought you had the guy in Chris Beard. There's not another guy like that out there that can that played for Texas, that went to Texas that you can just go get from another powerhouse like they did with Tech.
Yeah, I think just wishful thinking on my end. It's like TJ Otzelberger, right? Like
I would have loved, he would have been fantastic. I thought they probably could have gotten him, right? They probably could have.
Like, could you have maybe kicked the tires on Dusty May? I know it's only been a year at Michigan, but I think he's Chris Jans at Mississippi or at Mississippi State. I think is really good, someone like that. But ultimately, I think it's a good hire, and I do think it's stable. Like you said, if nothing else, it stabilizes you. Where after the whole Chris Beard thing, and you go to Rodney Terry, it's all felt very unstable.
Yeah, it felt safe. It's a safe hire.
Yes,
because if you look back, people talk about the Sark hire. People do not remember that Sark was not his first choice. His first choice was Sonny Dykes. A safe hire, right? That would have been a very safe hire. Would the ceiling have been the same? Probably not, right? As we see now with TCU, but it would have been a safe hire. I think this is very similar, maybe with a higher ceiling. Obviously, Sean Miller's had more postseason success comparatively than Sonny Dykes did at SMU and Cal. But I think that was the similar thinking. Was like, let's just get a guy to stabilize this chaotic program, bring in good recruits, bring in some good transfers, get us to the tournament, get us to the second weekend a couple times before we start talking about Final Fours. And so, I think it's a safe hire. I know some fans will be like underwhelmed a little bit, but like, this isn't a guy that got fired for losing at Arizona, right? It was recruiting violations that are like legal now. So
just because he recruited DeAndre Ayton.
I was about to say, he gave it back to DeAndre Ayton. Congratulations. Okay, cool. Texas would have done the exact same thing to get a number one overall pick.
Yes.